Welcome back for our second lesson on Christotherapy. In this lesson, we will explore how society affects personality. In therapy, these insights will help you soften the shame and guilt that drive many clients into therapy. We know the brain learns, but cannot learn about itself. This is not the scientific question, can we understand brains, which we explored in our lesson on learning. It is the personal question, can I understand myself? If you encounter a client that doesn't express this need, tell me. At some point in every first session, my client's desire for change is voiced as, I don't understand why I do that. Behind that frustration is loneliness, the feeling of being misunderstood, or rejection. We are social creatures. From the moment of birth, we can avoid pain only by clinging to another human. That truth lives deep in our earliest conditioning. And if our isolation does not come with physical pain, the brain will create phantom pain to drive us to seek companionship. In this lesson, we will chart the social challenges that confront us as we travel the path from infancy to fulfillment, succeeding or failing according to our skills and social support. We leave these challenges with attitudes about our place in the world. These attitudes are a form of expectation. Illuminating and transforming a client's attitudes is essential to effective therapy. In navigating the landscape of personality, we will draw upon our understanding of learning. We characterize the networks in the brain and how they refine their structure to improve skill. That skill applies only within certain expectations for experience, making us vulnerable to change. Our earliest learning is driven simply by survival. We need to figure out what works by trial and error. The resulting behaviors are called reactions. As we master language, we are encouraged to communicate our needs and to negotiate commitments. These are called responses. When wishing to change behavior, we have two strategies. Rationality allows us to anticipate outcomes and therefore to achieve success without the second part of trial and error. Reasons, conversely, convince others to support our success. As reasons create social expectations, they also make us vulnerable to change. The theory of accommodation anticipates the conditions under which change will occur. Turning now to personality, what exactly is it? The Oxford Dictionary calls it a description of your character, which to me seems like defining water as H2O. Take some time to articulate your view of personality, because I'm going to describe it in practical terms. If you have a strong view, at the very least, you're going to have to set it aside for the duration of this lesson. Seriously, pause the presentation and take some time to think about what personality is. Whatever we think about personality, we know that it develops under many influences. Evolutionary biologists love to cite our genes, but the nourishment we receive in the womb affects the expression of our genes. What is innate, then, may include our social class. After birth, our family controls the conditions under which our personality develops. A child scolded for being too smart for your britches may become disdainful or vindictive, whereas a child taken to the science museum will be emboldened in their curiosity. Given that our parents and community affect our personality, in the end, shouldn't we assert our own preferences? Therapy is a venue in which self-examination is facilitated and self-assertion can be practiced. We want a practical definition of personality, one that we can use to organize growth. I think that it is useful to start with the root of the word, person. As a person, you have capacities for interacting with the world. These allow you to perceive and interpret stimulus, prioritize events, and influence outcomes through your behavior. Your personality, then, is your own unique style for navigating reality. The steps outlined here seem to follow in order. Our confidence in our behavior, however, can influence our priorities and even perception. The pain felt in a cut finger softens as soon as we put the Band-Aid on. That's not because the finger isn't sending pain signals, but because the subconscious, knowing that action has been taken, doesn't forward them to our attention. Conscious construction of personality occurs most intensely during our teen years, when we begin to turn our attention away from family and onto our peers. Sociologists that study social media have learned that young people will create and delete profiles as they work out the kinks in managing relationships. When I was a youth, I used fantasy role-playing games for the same purpose, trying out lawful good and chaotic evil personalities, though the latter were never terribly convincing. Organically into the moment of birth, the fetus is part of its mother. How does it learn that it is a separate person? Exploration of the boundaries between self and the world begins with physical action. We learn to control our bodies. Mastery brings us the opportunity to explore the world. To walk is not enough. At a minimum, we must take care of the activities of daily life, eat, dress, elimination, etc. And true independence is not attained until we can work and drive. This is practical intelligence, of which IQ is one measure. Once we can control our experiences, we can act upon how we feel doing them. Those feelings are complex, involving primary senses, muscle tension, metabolism, organ function, and social context. These feelings guide us towards actions that sustain our organic well-being. Emotional intelligence organizes feelings, allowing us to manage them, and others as well as within ourselves. The most important benefit of emotional mastery is consistent motivation arising from subconscious belief that our actions support our well-being. Let me repeat that and encourage you to pause to reflect. The most important benefit of emotional mastery is consistent motivation arising from subconscious belief that what we do supports our well-being. As social creatures, we discover that skill is not sufficient to our well-being. We need other people. To ensure their availability, we enlarge our circle of care to include others, seeking to create conditions that support their well-being. In building reciprocity, we value qualities that ensure social cohesion, the glue that brings communities through difficulty. This is moral intelligence, a dialogue built around virtues and vices. Gauging a client's maturity is essential in framing the therapeutic dialogue. American men, for example, are often reluctant to use the language of emotion. Diffusing internal tension then drops down into the language of doing. Where is the tension in your body? What happens when you soften your belly? And pay attention to the sensations that arise when you breathe into your gut. Our behavior matures from reactive to responsive as we attain moral intelligence. Remember that this follows as we replace parental discipline with personal judgment. The journey towards maturity is not direct, however. Reactivity in the lowest levels of behavior can hide for decades, interrupting our adult relationships when childhood bias resurfaces. Two forms of reactivity, in fact, can be recognized in our dominant theories of behavior, from the human humors of ancient Greece to modern theories of attachment. Let's look at them now. Our first challenge is learning to regulate our metabolism, the rate of our activity. The body has two basic rates, calm and panic. We should be calm most of the time, as that reserves energy for physical and mental growth, including healing. In panic, our body focuses on survival, and tissues fill with toxins. We push ourselves to the limits of endurance and beyond. For what point is there in holding back if the outcome is death? From the default state, calm, panic is brought on by the release of hormones from the brain. The overall response is mediated by the vagus nerve. This wanders throughout the upper body from the face into the organs of the torso. While our breath and heart rate increases, the liver dumps fuel into the bloodstream. The face signals submission or threat, and our immune system prepares for wounds. This process is coordinated in the deepest part of the brain, using an ancient low-speed nerve fiber. In higher animals, however, the vagus nerve has a high-speed fiber that originates in the cortex. With training, this fiber can intervene in the unfolding of panic. This is a skill passed from mother to infant. While we should enjoy calm when we find it, most of us live in an in-between state called anxiety. This is not natural. Most animals stay in panic for 30 seconds at most before returning to calm. In humans, however, both society and imagination can reignite panic without providing us an outlet. You can't hit gridlock traffic or the creaky walls that conjure images of a home invasion. Still, we can't stay in panic continuously, so the body finds a level of activity with tolerable levels of toxins. Tolerable does not mean healthy necessarily. The consequences for our well-being can be severe. Gastric distress, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, and other chronic illnesses are linked to chronic anxiety. Chronic anxiety also affects our behavior. Within a secure environment, we can calmly consider the options before us and behave responsibly. Conversely, in a stressful environment, we tend to be rushed and therefore reactive. To protect ourselves from criticism, we marshal reasons that justify our behavior, and since that behavior follows a logic of survival, aggression may be triggered when our reasons are challenged. This is called neurotic behavior. When told that our behavior has negative consequences, a neurotic person responds as though threatened. As we learn to navigate our environment, another bias begins to form. If we find at hand everything that we need, we can take risks with our behavior, knowing that we can rest and even heal at the end of the adventure. Conversely, when resources are limited or out of reach, we consider our behaviors more carefully, seeking to protect ourselves from harm. This bias is expressed as differential capacity between the two hemispheres of the brain. When we are born, the spontaneously, normally right side of the brain is dominant. When a behavior stops working, the alternate side, normally left, analyzes the experience, seeking specific clues to guide us away from harm. For example, we might be safe wrestling with mother, but not so much with elder brother. Bilaterality, differences between right and left, manifests in sense processing. The right side of the brain has only one tone center, so when making music, we dissolve into a sense of oneness. The left side understands grammar and has two speech centers, one for talking and one for listening. Stuttering follows when we pay too much attention to what we are saying and vanishes when we sing. Sociability controls many of our relationship choices. In our friendships, we enjoy the company of those like us. In long-term relationships, conversely, we seek our complement. This follows because adventurous mothers tend to push their children into challenging situations, driving their children into protective patterns. Protective mothers plan ahead to ensure safety, causing their children to chafe adventurously against restrictions. In forming partnerships, we feel most comfortable with a relationship's dynamic that is consistent with the reactions formed in childhood. The importance of neurosis and sociability to the personality is revealed in both ancient and modern wisdom. In the ancient world, the four humas reflect the combinations of neurotic and security the combinations of neurotic and secure with protector and adventurer. The ancients were impressed by the forcefulness of neurotic personalities, the choleric and melancholic, as opposed to the sanguine and phlegmatic. This is something that has been carried over, unfortunately, to modern politics. Modern attachment theory, with the categories shown at the top of the slide, tries to guide neurotic personalities toward greater romantic security. The neurotic protector is characterized as avoidant, while the neurotic adventurer is anxious. Avoidant partners will actually show signs of panic when asked to respond authentically to their partner's needs, while anxious partners will call and text obsessively to cool their fear of rejection. Happily, 60% of us are secure in our attachment styles, investing in our partners with the expectation that they will reciprocate. Regrettably, 15% of us are disorganized in our relationships, combining the worst of the avoidant and anxious patterns. For secure partners, at the bottom of the screen, Dr. Kappas of the Hypnosis Motivation Institute described emotional and physical sexuality. Bilateral bias carries over into our experience of sex and tends to amplify crisis. When that is explained, partners can find that they can restore and sustain the bliss of the honeymoon experience. As Christotherapists, we go further. A complementary partner provides us with experiences and feedback that orient us in converting our reactions to responses. A good relationship is the most direct route to maturity. While neurosis and sociability are fundamental, they do not account for the division of the mind between conscious and subconscious realms. To understand this, we will introduce elements of the theory of mind that will be developed later. Here is a graphic representing the primary tensions in a child's mind. Imagine that you are looking at the face, so the green area labeled euphoria is on the right side of the brain. At the base of the brain, we see the survival instinct that, when overstimulated, drives us toward neurosis. On the opposite sides, we characterize the adventurous and protective emotional experience. Euphoria makes us socially generous, while fear drives social reticence. While we enjoy euphoria, we can't be the child that licks the frosting on every cupcake looking for the perfect one. Neither can we hide under the bed when the guests arrive at our party. A healthy personality is balanced. In children, that balance is encouraged by parents that provide us reasons to guide our behavior. This is critical. Any system of two criteria is unstable. We need a third factor to monitor and stabilize the balance. This does not apply only to our sociability. We know from our discussion of the vagus nerve that the same principle is seen in regulation of the balance between panic and calm. The thinking part of the brain is the stabilizing third factor. Obviously, this integration of the mind facilitates learning. So why do we surrender it? That crisis is presented here. When we enter school, society imposes different standards on our behavior. Because our behaviors at home are critical for our survival, they are sealed behind a barrier called the critical mind. A new part of the personality, the I or social identity, is created to negotiate social perils. While perils may have existed at home, they were not subject to negotiation. We simply learn to survive them. It is in society that we confront controversy, and so learn that people, including our parents, may manipulate us. The barrier between conscious experience and subconscious behaviors slows the pace of behavioral adaptation. In other words, the reactive behaviors of childhood are locked in until we work actively to convert them into mature responses. This reconciliation is complicated by the awakening after the split in the mind of sexual desire. This imperative boils up from the subconscious, and the divided mind struggles to reconcile it with social expectations for romance. As if relationships weren't hard enough, this gulf of self-awareness leads us to hurt others and ourselves. The resulting loss of trust causes the barrier of the critical mind to harden. As concluded in our summary of attachment therapy, Christotherapy seeks to heal this loss of self-trust, inspiring clients to reap the benefits of romantic partnership as they grow toward maturity. This comes with a softening of the critical mind that enhances responsiveness in every area of life. The celebration of this expectation is unique to Christotherapy. To this point, our study of personality has focused on the way the mind reacts to experience. We know, though, that these reactions will eventually be chained to expectations that manifest as attitudes. These attitudes bias all aspects of our personality, affecting how we perceive events and then interpret, prioritize, and behave. As defined in our study of learning, Attitudes unify our reasoning. As reasoning is a social process, Eric and Joan Erickson recognize that attitudes form through the natural social crises that we navigate as we mature. The logic of this sequence is compelling, motivating the named stages of development. Your course materials include a one-sheet that summarizes the theory. Each crisis evolves around a partner and resolves a fundamental question about our standing with the world. As we exit the crisis, success or failure generates an attitude that we carry with us into the future. In this framework, our neurotic personality suffers from mistrust, and sociability reflects the resolution of the two following crises, autonomy and initiative. You might ask, why progress before success is achieved? Well, because society imposes expectations on us. Within the family, these may be a matter of convenience. Parents get tired of changing diapers, for example. Society can be more forceful, setting ages for schooling and retirement. And then there is biology. The procreative urge, for example, drives us away from family and into intimate pairings. As the stages are progressive, when forced from a failed crisis, we are left with a weak foundation for the next stage. At age 24, then, the client may be concerned with isolation, but the root lies in a helicopter parenting at 4 and 5 that instilled guilt. That guilt may manifest in adulthood as passivity that frustrates a lover's search for intimacy. This is a typical pattern. Clients will first articulate reasons that highlight the crisis corresponding to their age. To peel the onion all the way back to guilt, shame, or mistrust can take several sessions. Note, however, that in exploring family and romantic history, the attitudes adopted in early stages will become apparent. Complaining that they always feel in the wrong with their lovers, we may ask whether they experienced any disruptions in childhood, such as a lost or missing family member. Such disruptions often divert energy needed to resolve the crisis at that age, making failure likely. From the age of the experience, the stages of development help to pinpoint the limiting attitude. We need to be judicious in the search for root causes. When the exploration is too rapid, the client can become disoriented by the behavioral implications. Dream incubation is a powerful tool in this quest. The subconscious, in re-examining past experience, is happy to be relieved of the complexity of compensation. When negative attitudes resist softening, we offer desensitization as a therapy. We will dwell in detail on these therapies in modules to come. So to summarize the main points from today, practically, personality describes how we navigate reality. The three forms of intelligence, practical, emotional, and moral, illuminate our growth to maturity. Reactions formed in childhood are sealed in the subconscious mind and resistant to change until we engage methodically in that work. Neurosis and sociability are the most significant reactions is implicated in our dominant theories of personality. Through the Erickson stages of development, we can interpret attitudes expressed in adulthood as reflecting on the resolution of inevitable social crises encountered in our journey to maturity. This presentation, along with its predecessor on learning, has considered personality as an outcome of learning. This framework empowers therapy. The client grasps the potential for change and the role of trance in softening internal resistance. As professionals, we are responsible for diagnosing the expectations and attitudes that underlie the client's presenting issues. As discussed, adult behaviors are often driven by expectations established in infancy, but understood only through the lens of an active social crisis. In tracing these links, we help the client activate their learning potential. We will return to these principles again and again as we study specific therapeutic goals. In our next module, however, we will focus on the therapeutic relationship. From our discussion of learning, resistance to behavior change is overcome through accommodation. Disruption is an essential step in that journey. While normally that disruption is unpleasant, as Christotherapist, you will gain skills for eliciting mental states, making comfort itself a source of disruption. See you next time.